Hey guys, this is April 15th, formerly known as tax day. It's when you used to have your taxes in place, or you could get penalties. But of course, due to all the stuff going on this year, I think they've actually moved it to July 15th. So don't worry if you've not filed your taxes. Not that most of you file taxes. Some of you do, because especially some of you guys, if you're working, you get practically all your taxes back because you're young and you don't have a lot of assets. So file your taxes, you can get a refund. So regardless, this is April 15th. We're on page 379, 9.3. We are multiplying polynomials today, which sounds really complicated, but you've probably already done it somewhat. You just really didn't know what you were doing. So let's take a moment to just pray to our Creator, and then we'll get started. So Heavenly Father, we praise you and we thank you for all the blessings you've given us, especially the salvation that you so freely granted all of us sinners, and that you loved us when we still were sinning. And Father, we just pray that you'll let the Holy Spirit just settle on each of us and to guide us and direct us and be a light into our path. And I pray that you'll just help everyone to understand algebra and for everyone to stay well. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, guys, let's get started on our algebra lesson. So I'm on page 379, and we're multiplying polynomials. Prior to us doing that, let's do a little brief lesson opener, which kind of goes back to what our previous chapter was, chapter 8, which was going over multiplying exponents. So if we look at our first lesson opener, as you can see, we have x times x. And technically what that's telling me is that there's a little exponent of 1 right here, and there's a little exponent of 1 right there. And when I multiply them, those two exponents add, and that becomes an x squared. So remember doing that from chapter 8? I hope you do, because it wasn't that long ago. Now, let's look at this right here. I have 2x times 3x. So what happens is my two coefficients, or the two constants, are going to multiply together like normal. That's going to become a 6. But what happens to the x and what happens to the x? Remember, they have the little exponent of 1 right here, and they get added together, and those become 6. The whole expression becomes 6x squared. Now, moving to the next one, we have 6x squared times x to the 7th power. So 6, you can imagine that the x has a little coefficient of 1. So 6 times that little coefficient of 1 right there is just going to still remain 6. And then now I don't have 1s. Now I have an exponent of 2 and an exponent of 7. Those get added together, and that becomes 6x to the 9th power. And then I move down here. This is pure old distributive property, which if there's one thing you're going to learn about multiplying polynomials, that's the process we're going to use a lot, is distributive property. I have to make sure that my 5 is multiplied to not just the x, but also the 4. And technically, you all should have begun this probably in the 6th grade. You might have got it in the 5th grade. You definitely had it you had it in the 7th and 8th. Hopefully. If you've completely purged that from your memory, that's fine. You also had distributive property and way back in August and September when we were doing chapter 1 or chapter 2, one of those. And you've used distributive property all year. But some of you guys are still forgetting that you need to multiply it to not just the first one, but also the second one. And this time, guys, when we're getting into polynomials, it might be that you have to distribute that to more than 2 things inside the parentheses. In fact, we'll do a problem here in a minute that you definitely have to do that. So make sure when I'm using distributive property, I have to multiply this to everything that's inside the parentheses that I'm multiplying it to. So 5 times x is going to become 5x. Then I don't just put down 4. Don't do that. You still have to multiply 5 times 4. That's going to become 20. So now my expression from that is 5x plus 20. Now, going down here, I'm going to move that down a little bit, just so you can see. My next expression is 8x, and then I'm going to distribute that and multiply it to x cubed minus 9. I have to make sure, just like I did up here, that I'm going to multiply it to both things in that parentheses. So this is going to have 8x to x cubed. 8 is going with the little, you can imagine the little coefficient of 1 that's right there, and that's just going to become 8. X to x cubed, remember, there's a little exponent right here. You can't see it's there, but it's a 1. Just basically saying, hey, I'm an x. Because remember, if it was a 0, it'd be a 1. So x, this little 1 plus the little 3 that's right there is going to make that x to the 4th power. And then that's a weird 4. Then don't forget to multiply the 8x. Now it's going to have to be multiplied to that 9. So obviously there's not an x there, so there's not going to be anything with an exponent, but I need to make sure I multiply the 8 to the 9. That's going to be a negative 72, right? And then the x comes along for the ride. So your last expression after you multiplied it should be 8x to the 4th power minus 72x. Just checking myself to make sure I did it right. So let's kind of look over what you're doing today. I'm not going to go over each example. The reason why is because you all would probably rather do your homework and go ahead and get some of that stuff taken care of. So if you want to look at example 1, you might want to write down, hey, I have something that looks like that on both my quiz and my test. They show you in example 1 how to distribute this. So far, what we've done is we are multiplying using the horizontal method. Now, some guys with polynomials, and sometimes, it's just easier for you to figure that out, you can use the vertical method. And that's what they show you on example 1. They show you how to do it first vertically, which is up and down, or horizontally, side to side. Typically, most of these algebra problems are going to be written horizontally. That doesn't mean that you can't take your scrap paper or even to the side on your math or your sheet somewhere, your quiz sheet, test sheet. You can go ahead and rewrite that as a vertical problem if that's easier for you. That's perfectly acceptable. And just make sure you show your work. And remember, the reason why I like for you to show work isn't necessarily because I'm being mean, but if I can see your work and I can see that you've got all the steps right, but then you messed up right here, then I can give you partial credit. If all you're doing is just putting an answer out there and it's wrong, then all I can do is just mark it wrong and take off the full amount for that. So make sure to use your work. So example 1 looks like a quiz and a test. I'm going to go over these weird little squares here in a minute. And then I also wanted you to mark example 5 as something that looks like your test. And what we're going to do is, rather than you go through all those examples, sometimes I would do that in class as well, use that as if you don't understand what I'm doing in class. Go back and read over those examples. That might help you. But let's get started with your homework. And right off the bat on your homework, they use these little color tiles, is what I call them. Let's take a stroll down the board. And I'm going to talk about those color tiles. Now, I have, all those color tiles, and I actually have little packets for each of you where you could get them out and you could actually manipulate these, because some math, especially Saxon math, it loves using manipulatives and doing things like this. But the color tiles that I have, and even the way they explain it in your book, they explain it a certain way, and then when they get to your test, when they get to your homework, when they get to your quiz, they do it a total different way. And in my experience, it's more confusing to use these tiles than me just showing you what they're doing. I'm going to show you what the actual quiz problem is on the test, because I just feel like it really, really confuses people. But on your homework, as well as on your quiz, you're going to have something that looks like this. And what you concentrate on is, at first, they wanted you to really look at the color tiles. And if they just stick with that, that would be fine. But then suddenly they move to this section and they start doing it differently. But technically, this is two polynomials that are being multiplied to each other. And on your quiz, this is exactly it. You just have to recognize this. So on the top, I have one polynomial, which is basically polynomial. What am I saying? Binomial. These are two binomials, which technically I guess is still a polynomial, that's being multiplied together. So I have a 3x. And then you think, what are those? 1 plus 1 would be 2. This is another polynomial. I'm stuck with it. Binomial. It's another binomial. And that is x plus 1. So on your quiz, they show you this, and they just want you to come up with what those two binomials are. And on your homework, that's what you're doing too. You're basically looking at the sides of all these squares, and they have actually kind of counted it out for you. So you can try to figure out what it is, and then you combine it. So hopefully that'll help you. Don't get upset if you do not understand this. This is supposed to be a learning method to help you understand polynomials, but I feel like the way they do it in your book is more confusing, and that's one reason why I didn't do it. It might be that it's easier as a 6th grader to understand this, so if so, I'm probably going to give this to the 5th and 6th, maybe the 5th, 6th grade teacher, see if they want it. Maybe because I've never used it in 7th and 8th. I thought it was confusing. I definitely think it's confusing for the 9th graders. Let's get started on homework. I am going to do number 8. That's on page 382 of your homework. Kicking over I'm stuck on my cord. So I've written out that problem right here. And I'll erase this so we can get back to this over here. And I've gotten you way too close to me. I can see that right now. All right, so kicking out the cord, bringing this out a little bit. So let's look at your first problem that's done vertically. And some of you guys, this is going to take you back to the early part of your 7th grade, where all you were doing was adding and subtracting and multiplying, and it was great. It was what had scared you so badly in 5th and 6th grade, you were so comfortable with, hopefully, in the 7th grade. But if I am going to multiply this, basically what is happening is I am going to multiply, hold on, I'm looking at my actual problem, make sure I do it exactly the way you all are going to do it, is I'm going to take the 7, like I normally do, and I'm going to multiply that to the 3a squared, the negative 2a, and the negative 4, and I'm going to line it up here so I can add that. Just like this was, I was multiplying this, I was multiplying, just going to show you. If I was multiplying 234 by 72, then what I would do is first I would multiply the 2 to the 4 and to the 3 and to the 4, and I would line that up so I could add it together. So that's what I'm going to do here as well. I'm going, you can start. I'm going to multiply the 7 to the 4, and it becomes the 28, and then my constants are going to add up right here. So the main thing you have to learn is just like here, where I'm trying to make sure I line up my columns where I can add. Over here, you have to keep in your brain, back from our last chapter, that when I'm adding, I have to add what? Like terms. I have to make sure that if it's a constant, I line the constants together. That's the numbers. If it's a variable, I line the variables up with their like terms. Make sure their exponents are like. So that's the main thing when you're using the vertical method, is making sure that you're stacking it to, when you make the addition, into like terms. So let's start with this. I'm going to multiply the negative 7 to the negative 4, and that becomes a 28. I'm going to multiply the negative 7 to the negative 2a. The two constants multiply together, and that will become a 14a. Last step is I'm going to multiply, okay, my plus sign, you're looking weird. The negative 7 to the negative 7 to the 3a squared, and that's going to become a negative 21a squared. And you all can, while you make sure you've got that written down, I'm going to make sure I've written down everything correctly myself. Now, let's start multiplying like we normally do. But remember, I need to make sure that when I'm stacking this, it's where they can add together. This one just naturally falls that way. Because you know how, if like my one problem I had over here, when I started multiplying that, at first I would line it up, and then you learned, like in 4th grade, you would scoot over that second section a little bit. We're going to do the same thing over here. Instead of stacking it right underneath, this is going to stack over one space. So, and as you notice, what happens is that ends up becoming like terms. So if I multiply a to the -4, I would scoot it over like I normally do. That's going to be a -4a. I'm going to multiply the a to the -2a, and that's going to become a -2a. Remember, little exponents going to add together, squared. Then my final my final little number coefficients that I'm going to have over here is going to be my a multiplying to my 3a squared. Those exponents are going to add together, and that's going to become a 3a cubed. Then we're going to go through and we're going to add all of the like terms. I'm just checking myself to make sure I've got everything right. So 3a cubed doesn't have anything to add to. He's all lonely. But if I have a -21a squared, and then I'm going to add that to a -2a squared, signs are the same. I simply add, keep my sign. That's going to be a -23a squared. Then I have a 14a, and I'm adding a -4a. Signs aren't the same. Going to subtract, keep the sign of the larger value, and that's going to become a 10a. And finally, I just drop down 28. So I'm going to look over what I just did. That looks correct. So does everybody get how to do that vertically? Now, we're going to move over to where we do one. First of all, I'm going to try to do one that's where all we're multiplying is just one coefficient. Then we're going to go where we're going to multiply binomials to binomials, and then we'll try to do at least one where it's a binomial to a trinomial. So let's scoot over a wee bit. I'm going to erase that so if you see weird numbers. If I'm going too fast, guys, the cool thing is you can like hit pause and then you can, or if you didn't understand it, you can always, rewind. I'm getting rid of this too. Sometimes when you got all this extra stuff on the board, I get confused. So what number am I doing now? I'm going to number 11. Number 11, I chose that because you have one on your test and your quiz that looks really similar to that. Hopefully I'm not making you all car sick with me moving this back and forth. So I have a -7k, and I'm going to multiply that to 8k squared plus 9k plus 6. Remember, using distributive property, that has to be multiplied to each thing in there. Thus far, you guys have used mainly distributive property with binomials, which is just two terms are in there. Now, this might be your first time, can't remember, that you're actually doing it to a trinomial, where it's more than just two. So I'm going to multiply the -7k to the 8k squared. So that's going to, so the -7 to the -8 is simply going to become a -56. Now think about what's happening to the k squared. If you look at the k squared to the k, my little exponents are adding together. So that's going to become a k cubed. So it's going to become cubed. Going to the next one. Nope, we're not going to have that. If I have the -7 to the +9, that's going to become a -63. My k to the k, those little exponents are going to add. It's going to become k squared. Then finally, I'm going to multiply this -7k to the positive 6, the numbers are going to add, the k comes along for, or not add, the numbers are going to multiply, and the k just comes along for the ride. So negative 7 to the positive 46 will become a negative 42, and then k just comes along. And that's how you do that one. One very similar on your test and your quiz that looks like that. So I'm just checking myself to make sure we've got that one done. The next one I am going to do is I want to do, I don't think I'll do that one. I think we'll do 15 and we'll do 17, because this one's actually kind of leading you up to what tomorrow's lesson is, and it's showing you how to do these, because tomorrow is going to show you an easier way to multiply binomials, perhaps. Some of you might not like it. So remember, algebra and mathematics, if there's a different way to do it and you're still getting the same answer, that's perfectly acceptable. Quite often, we did substitution, we did elimination, we did all those things. So it's just whichever way you like to do it. That's perfectly fine. Which way, and I would say, since you take standardized tests, whichever way is quicker for you to get to do it. So we're going to do 15 and 17. It's where we're multiplying binomials. I've actually said that 16 kind of looks similar to one that's on a test, so you might want to take a look at that. Today's homework is supposed to be 1 through, I would say do 1 through 39 odd, because 43 is trying to draw a diagram with these, and I just wouldn't even fool with it. But that's me. If you want to, knock yourself out. I'm also going to say that exercise B is just a whole lot more practice. Especially, it's making more complex problems where you can multiply, but then you're also using everything you used in 9.1 and 9.2 as well. It's almost like it's more cumulative review than anything else. So I really want you to practice at least 1 through 19 odd, just to make sure that you know what you're doing for your test or quiz. Don't worry. Tomorrow, you're basically doing the same thing with using FOIL. So let's do 15 and 17 together. I'm going to scoot to my blank side of the board over here. Remember, if I fall, do not call 911, because I am filming this several days before you actually watch it. So you wouldn't help me. I'll just still be laying here. So look at 15. 15, we are multiplying binomials, which means I have 2 terms in each one. Take my book with me so I don't have to go back and forth. So I have y minus 4. And this is setting up, just so you can remember in the future, this is setting up some special products. That's one reason why we are doing this. It's also setting up, 16 and 17 are kind of setting up some special products as well. So when you get to that, it's like not 9.4, but maybe 9.5, 9.6. I think that's when we go through special products, and you have to start looking at those and recognizing that. I've got a lot of glare on that Y, but that's okay. All right, so let's go ahead and multiply this vertically. So far we haven't done that with a binomial. So what I'm going to do here is basically I am going to, you choose which one you want to do. It doesn't matter. But I'm going to just look at my book and see what they did in mine. So with 15, they basically wrote out y minus 3 twice. And if you're thinking, what are they doing? We're using distributive property. We're going to multiply the first y minus 3 by y, and then we're going to multiply the second y minus 3 by the negative 4. And we're going to make it look like that. And then you're going to get all this stuff, and then we have to go back to what we used in 9.1 and 9.2 and add all the like terms together to get that last expression. So y times y, the little exponents of 1 add together to make it y squared, or you can start saying to yourself, y times y is y squared. However it gets in your brain. Then I'm going to multiply y to the negative 3. It becomes a negative 3y. Don't worry about, we're going to get a positive or negative here in just a second. If I multiply the negative 4 to the negative y, it becomes a negative 4y. Then finally, I'm going to multiply the negative 4 to the negative 3, and I'm going to get a positive 12. Now I look at my expression after I'm done. Is there any like terms that I can combine together? And probably what you're saying is like, yeah, the two things in the middle. The two y's need to be combined together. So that's basically, if I'm adding those together, since I have a negative 3, and I'm going to add the opposite, that would be, I'm going to go ahead and add a negative 4 to those. So I'm combining the negative 3 to the negative 4. If you're trying to subtract or you're getting confused, remember I'm adding the opposite. I'm not subtracting that. I'm adding the opposite, and that's going to become a negative 7y. And then I just drop these two guys right now. And that's my final expression. So that's that one. Let's do one more. Very, very similar, but I just want to do one more to get it into your brain. Hopefully not to torture you. I'm losing my pen lid. I'm going to go ahead and erase that. This is actually, have you noticed that the math lessons have been getting shorter? But it might be because we were at the end of that last chapter, and normally the last few sections of the last chapter are more complex. So let's look at 17. Just one more to get in your brain. I'm multiplying two binomials. This is going to be a special binomial. So you're actually going to use these tomorrow. You're also going to use them the next day. It's a special product. So I'm going to distribute this first one among these two. So I'm going to write c plus 8 2 times. That's how I like to think about it. Then the first one, I'm going to multiply to c. The second one, and you can see kind of what I'm doing. The second one, I'm going to take it and multiply it by the negative 3. So I multiply c times c, little exponents go together, or if you can start thinking c times c, that's c squared. Then c to the 8 is going to become an 8c. Now we're over here, done with this one over here. Negative 3 to the c will be a negative 3c. Then we'll think about what we're doing right here. We've got negative 3 to the 8. That will become a negative 24. And once again, right in the middle, you've got two little guys that need to be combined. And before you can think of this a couple of different ways. Okay, this one actually works out where it is like 8 minus 3, but if that really confuses you, because I know integers do, just think that's going to be 8, and I'm going to be adding a negative 3 to it. Signs aren't the same, I'm going to subtract. So that's going to finally become c squared plus a positive 5c, because we subtract to keep the sign of the larger number, and then I bring down the negative 24. So that's your lesson for April 15th. Happy not tax day, because taxes are not due then. And if you have any questions, you are more than welcome to text me, to message me, or to get in touch with me one way or the other. So this week, what I have done is I'm sending home both the quiz for 9.1 and 9.2, as well as sending the quiz for 9.3 and 9.4. So you now have 9.3. You'll get 9.4 tomorrow. We'll actually go on 9.5, hopefully on Friday. And then your 9.5, 9.6 test will come quiz will come the following week. Or you might be in school then. I'm not sure. God knows, and He'll take care of us either way. So have a good rest of the day and stay well.